Hi everybody! Today we're going to have a look at the different phonemic charts because sometimes that can be a bit confusing. So what chart are we talking about? Well, this one here. This sound chart is commonly used in EFL coursebooks and materials for British English to teach students about pronunciation. We have a section for the monophthongs, another one for the diphthongs, and at the bottom we have the consonants. And the chart shows all 44 sounds of English, but to be precise, of British English. Now sometimes some of the charts leave out one of the diphthongs, or the one where I put the asterisk. And so that would be only 43 sounds and not 44. Now, these sound symbols that you can see here are all taken from the IPA with one main difference. Now, the IPA is the International Phonemic Alphabet, and of course it contains all of the sound symbols for all of the sounds for all of the different languages, but we only need the ones for British English. And so we've taken the sounds from the IPA, only the ones that we need for British English, but there is one main difference. And that is for one of the single vowel sounds, you can see the arrow pointing to the e. So in British English charts that are used to teach RP, received pronunciation, that's standard British English, we will use this sound symbol to show the sound e. And here's an example for a word. For example, in the word every, the very first sound starts with an e. However, in the IPA, that's actually a different sound symbol. It looks like this here. You can see it on the screen. So the word every would be transcribed using this other symbol. Now the pronunciation is the same, okay? But there's one little difference, and sometimes people get a bit confused because they think, wait, why do we have two different sound symbols here? I'm not sure why this happened. I just know it did happen. So be aware of that. So just to remember, in phonemic charts, for the purpose of teaching English as a foreign language, we usually call this EFL, the symbol E is used instead. Okay, so you don't see this other funny symbol. And especially when these materials are produced by a European publisher. So they don't use the IPA symbol, they use the E instead. That just looks like a small case E from the alphabet. Now, this phonemic chart is standard in teaching English as a foreign language. However, it can look a little bit different depending on the book or the website you use. So the chart that you just looked at is really inspired by the original Adrian Underhill chart for British English. Adrian Underhill is a teacher of English as a foreign language, specifically for pronunciation, and he really invented this chart, not the sound symbols, but the arrangement of the sound symbol in specifically this way. Now, if this is new for you and you've never seen this chart and you don't really know anything about the sound symbols or the way that they are arranged on the chart, you can learn more about just the vowel chart, but then also the entire phonemic chart in two of my other videos, and I will link to those in the description box. So if you compare them side by side, because you might see the one from Adrian Underhill, you might see one just using normal font, not sort of the one that looks almost a bit like handwriting. But if you have a careful look and you compare them side by side, you will notice that they are exactly the same. They contain the exact same sounds and they are arranged in exactly the same way. So many times books will use the Adrian Underhill chart in its arrangement, but they use different fonts, and so that makes it look different. And sometimes you might see a chart that looks a little bit different though in its presentation. Here's an example. This is the one that the British Council will give you on their website. And of course, the British Council is a very reliable resource, and they have great materials for learning and teaching English. And so if you look at the sound chart, you can see the familiar sound symbols. But if you compare it side by side to the Adrian Underhill chart, just take a careful look. Got the monophthongs, doesn't look very different here. In fact, it's exactly the same. But then look at the diphthongs. There's a little change here. And then also at the consonants, the same amount of consonants, but the arrangement is different. So first of all, there is one diphthong missing, and there's a very different arrangement of consonant sounds from the Adrian Underhill chart. Now, in the British Council chart, we actually only have 7 diphthongs, not 8, because ur is left out. And I told you that already earlier, that very often a lot of the charts do not include ur, and they just use different ways of transcribing that sound sequence. The other difference is found in the consonants, and at first you might think, why did they arrange the sounds in this way? It is totally different, and you might not recognize the difference. And so here the consonants are arranged by unvoiced. So if you have a look at the first row, all of those sounds are unvoiced sounds from p all the way to k. And then in the second row, from b to g, we have all the voiced consonants. And then in the last row, you have the rest, which is actually the same. The last row is the same in the Adrian Underhill chart, but the arrangement again is slightly different, the order. And if you think, why did Adrian Underhill arrange his chart so differently? Like I said, watch my other video. There is a lot of logic behind the arrangement of the Adrian Underhill chart as well. It might not look like this on first glance, but there is. So, different arrangement, but again, everything else is the same. The sounds haven't changed. The pronunciation and production of these sounds is exactly the same. And sometimes here you might have seen this chart here. This is from a very popular publisher. This is the English File chart by Oxford University Press. English File is a really popular course book for English as a foreign language. And they developed their own sound chart. Now again, the symbols are exactly the same, but you can see this looks very different. And the main difference is that little sound pictures have been added here to help the students memorize the sound. Now, when you first look at it, you might think, oh, there's too much on this chart. It's confusing. But actually, the little pictures can be incredibly helpful for the students. So if we have a look at it in more detail in a moment, you will also notice that there are different colors used for the boxes, and that's really because they show the different vowel length, and they also show voiced and unvoiced. So if we zoom in here, the short vowels are in red, the long vowels in yellow, then we have diphthongs in purple, and unvoiced sounds are in green, and the voiced ones in blue. Now that of course is really super useful, I think, for students. But the little pictures, so for example, we have the symbol I for fish, because fish contains the sound I, and then E for tree. And so these symbols can be very useful if you want to teach your students the sounds of English, and you want to give them a little aid to help them remember the sound. So although this chart is not necessarily logically arranged by manner of articulation or by, front sounds then going to the back, like the Adrian Underhill chart. I think the pictures make it a really user-friendly sound chart. Ideally, we have a chart where we have logical arrangement of the sounds and little pictures as well. That needs to still be developed. So let's have a look at these three side by sides. Like I said, I would say these are probably the most well-known sound charts for British English. There are plenty of other ones as well, but these are really well known because Adrian Underhill, the British Council, and also Oxford University Press are all very well known. And the main thing to remember is the sounds are really all the same, apart from that one little diphthong that has been added to the Adrian Underhill chart that the other charts do not contain. That's not true, actually. The English file chart does contain or as well, because there's a picture for tourist. I forgot. So all of the rest, though, is exactly the same. So my question to you is, which one do you find the most appealing? Which one do you think is the most useful for you to use? And that might be because you are a learner of English as a foreign language, or maybe you are studying phonology at university so that you'll be able to transcribe, to develop speech recognition systems. So which of the charts do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, if there's any other chart that you prefer to use, then let me know as well. And some of you might ask now, ooh, but what about this American sound chart? I've seen this one as well, and that looks very different to the British English one. Yes, both of them are by Adrian Underhill. He developed both of them. But there is obviously quite a difference, especially with the vowels, if you have a look at them. And that is such a big topic that we are going to compare these two in our next video. So make sure you subscribe, hit the notification button so that you don't miss out on the next video. And if you have any other questions about English pronunciation, or phonology, or speaking English, please leave me a message below.